Welcome to Etter+Ramli's Managed Success deploys NetSuite through Commandos, and sharing with you how we understand Managed Success program of Etter+Ramli is something we'd love to share with all of you. So happy to have you all here. But before anything else, before we dive into the exciting world of NetSuite, let me just say a few house rules. So just make sure that your microphone is muted, and anything that you want to ask our esteemed speakers, you can ask at the end of the session. And any experience or any insights are welcome. Plus, this session will be recorded for those who cannot make it to this time slot. All right, so I hope everybody will enjoy the knowledge sharing today, and let's dive in. So let's get acquainted with Etter+Ramli. Etter+Ramli is an independent, unbiased managed service provider to the client side of the NetSuite user community, meaning we overall quarterback your NetSuite from the acquisition of the system until deployment and until you need us to make sure that the value of the NetSuite system will be given to you and you'll reach the promised land of the powerful tool we call NetSuite. We are charged with a lot of success specialists that came from the epicenter of NetSuite in the Philippines, and we are truly global. We cover clients or NetSuite users across the globe, from North America to Latin America, Asia, Europe, UK, Australia, and as far as Africa. So as you can see in the slide, we are growing. We have 900 NetSuite users, and we are operating in 36 countries with 258 subsidiaries. And we also have developed our own IP application on top of NetSuite that our CAO can discuss later. So, of course, we want you to know who you are dealing with. I am Ria Rodriguez Richardson. I came from the epicenter of NetSuite in the Philippines, have served as channels director and even a direct sales from 2015 all the way up to 2022 up to today. So I have been involved in closing and winning 200 plus new customers, new logos in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia, plus in America. I have enabled and empowered C-level executives, resellers, BDRs, SDRs, up to CFOs and C-level of the enterprises and even small, medium goal-getters like you. And now, to introduce to you the main man of the hour is our CEO and business process expert, Todd Kempton. As you can see, Todd has been involved with NetSuite, I think, for half of his life, with 20 years in the business and 120 companies that he has helped so far, making sure that their NetSuite implementation is on track. He has 87% timely project delivery. And as I said, we call him the well-balanced NetSuite talent in the universe of the NetSuite ecosystem, from being NetSuite client manager and a professional service manager, from being a partner solution provider, and now standing in front of us as the CEO of Etter+Ramli.
Thanks, Ria. Thanks, Ria. Great to be here.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Todd, for sharing your expertise once again in this live webinar. So we are going to talk about, and you're going to walk us through, the Managed Success program of Etter+Ramli and how it is called the managed service plus coupled with customer success, and the ultimate goal that you're giving to the customer, we call managed success. So I'd love to hear more about that, Todd.
Yeah, thanks, Ria. So, you know, over the years, I've worked with lots of customers and really seen them go through their life cycle. And you mentioned that I've come from the partner side, I've come from the principal as well. And I know over these years, I've really paid a lot of attention to what it means for customers to become successful with the platform and what that life cycle looks like. So when I was working on what Etter+Ramli was all about, it really wanted to marry these two elements of what is customer success and what does that look like with a managed service approach to the problem. And that gave rise to our client-side engagement model. And of course, we've coined this phrase, managed success, because it really encapsulates these two very important elements of the puzzle.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Todd. And I know that the audience would love to know the vital elements of a managed success program.
Yeah, yeah. So inside of this, managed success has got a few really core components, core elements. And they're broken down like what you see on the screen here. We've got the success plan, we've got the resourcing mix, administrative discipline, and orthodox solutioning. I think today we're just going to talk about the success plan, and hopefully in future webinars we get to delve into the other areas. But the success plan is a pretty important part of the puzzle because it's really the first piece of magic that we bring to the client. So in order to understand what a success plan really looks like, we need to understand where it sits in the life cycle. A lot of things in business need or operate better when they have a vision and a strategy. And from my personal view, when a business has got a vision and a strategy for how they're going to use NetSuite, they're much more likely to stay on course toward success. If they don't have that, then the opportunity for bias or individual opinion to creep away from the core goal becomes higher. So we always start with this notion of, define what your vision is and define what your strategy is for the business. The next elements really talk about the pathway, knowing how you're going in that pathway. And to really understand success, it really talks about productivity. And that's the amount of transactions we're putting through the system for the expense of running the system and the total performance of the system as well. So some of the KPIs we talk about are things like, cost per transaction and system cost per head. They're only guides, and they help let us see the woods for the trees, if you like. They're not really an end in themselves, but they're a really good guideline to illustrate just how productive we are, and they're great to measure year-to-year progress in earning more value. We call that earned value, the dividend, but we can talk about that later. The next part of the success plan talks about productivity improvements and how they get planned so that they minimize the impact of change and maximize the output. And that's a really important piece of the puzzle. If you try and take on too much too soon, then the change management cycle becomes too great. And so we try and focus on incremental, iterative improvements that progressively earn value. And the last element is really talks about the success team, and that is how the business and us, my team, how we get balance between understanding the business and all the stakeholders and understanding how NetSuite can help them work better. So I think we take this opportunity to dive in. What do you think, Rhea?
Yeah, it's very interesting because it's like Etter+Ramli paves the way to create a Bible that you can always reference to. And I hear you talking about a lot of efforts that requires leadership, tactical opinion, and not only just one super admin or super ninja. And you also need functional and a lot of expertise in database management, plus also technical,
You bet.
product development. So
You bet.
yeah, I agree.
It's a real mix of things. The main thing that we try and get to with managed success is that it's our methodology, and it's the methodology which we deploy into clients, which means that we're able to reproduce outcomes in a predictive way. And that is a really important part of the puzzle because it means that we step away from existing in a world of NetSuite gurus, if you like, and we approach the problem as a programmatic process for iterative improvement. And that becomes really important because we measure it back to actual productivity gain. And inside of the methodology, we're balancing all of these conflicting or constraint or areas of constraint to provide a full solution in this area.
Yeah, I'm sure that our audience are excited to meet the A team of Etter+Ramli.
We certainly try. So let's deal with the first part of this is about the formal vision and defining a strategy. When from a principal's perspective, NetSuite was always the business suite, which really put it at the focal point of the entire business operation. But then different customers came along and demarcated different areas of the business as their priority. Was it just a CRM? Was it just an ERP? Was it only for procurement or asset management, or was it the full suite? Did it integrate with other systems? When we engage with clients, we always like to go back to this point of what is your formal vision for the system? What is it that you truly want the business to be? What is it that you truly want NetSuite to be within your business? Now, often people talk about it as a single point of truth. They talk about it as a business grail, and we're open to whatever definition that is. The most important thing is that the customer knows what it is, and that's important because that provides some level of reference and rigidity. The strategy is important as well because the strategy speaks to where the system sits within the ecosystem of business assets. And the strategy then talks about, is it the core system? Is it used for data warehousing as the final reporting destination? Is it only used for financial reporting? And what's the strategy for maintaining that on a long-term basis? And there are really important questions that need to be answered, normally only once, but reviewed periodically to make sure that what was originally conceived remains relevant to today. The second point we talk about is around the KPIs, and I mentioned it early on. KPIs are there to help us measure what the system utilization and what the usage performance has been of the system as well. Now, because we're heavily prone toward productivity improvements, we're also heavily biased towards measuring the productivity gain that we influence as well, or we bring to the client. And that means that we need a benchmark that we can measure our own success and our own performance against over time. And so KPIs become a really important part of this. And some of the KPIs that we talk about are things like total cost of ownership divided by transactions processed, and that gives us a cost per transaction. We talk about license gain. We talk about transaction throughput per employees. Because ultimately, these are the guides that really reference whether the system is earning a dividend for the customer or they're not. And they're a pretty pragmatic set of stats that we hold very dear to what we measure as success. Naturally, there are point of view, and we do align with the client's perspective on these things as well. But without KPIs to measure progress, it's always a guessing game. The third point talks about the procedure of priority. So how do we prioritize the productivity improvements that we see? And this is really important because when you're trying to extract value from a system like NetSuite, you've got to be able to plan out your improvements in a way that represents a manageable change for the business. If you try and do too much too soon, then the change component will undermine the benefit of the productivity, and therefore you will never achieve your outcome. So it's important to plan out how you want to release value and which users you want to focus on gaining productivity with, rather than the end point all in one shot. This also means that it creates an iterative change cycle, which is helpful for being able to squeeze more out of the system without offsiding all of the users that rely on it day to day as well. Make sense? So might be helpful to now pivot and talk about the success team. Why is this important? NetSuite's a piece of software, and it's a piece of software that runs the business as you get to see it. But that requires a lot of knowledge. It requires functional knowledge about what the system is and how it works, as well as how the business operates and who the stakeholders are. So the success team is a marriage between identified resources on the client side, normally leadership, who can represent the process leader role or the process owner role. And they're coupled with our analysts who represent the process analyst role. So one is speaking for the benefit of the business and is the gatekeeper on what that process looks like over a period of time, whereas the NetSuite analyst is helping to enable that process owner with all of the knowledge they need to help manage those expectations. And within this, the project team includes really not just the analyst, but also the engagement manager as well. And they sit on the Etter+Ramli side, and they're trying to help the process owner really understand and manage what does success look like, and what does ultimate success really look like as well. And that level of leadership and level of alignment becomes highly important to the overall process. So that's talking about the success team, really critical. It's always good to talk to pivot and make things more practical. And in each one of these areas, we've got areas of example. But one area that really sticks out to me involves a client in the discrete services business who had a real trouble trying to get their invoicing correct. And from that, they couldn't leverage the standard NetSuite functionality for project milestone invoicing because it didn't fit with their business. But they did use project management to manage those tasks. So we help them understand what that looks like and how we can improve their invoicing process. But because they were too new to NetSuite, they didn't really understand their own data flows inside of the system. And so what we did is we designed a solution that allows them to step through the process in a practical and pragmatic way, whereby the first step was that they manage the invoicing, but they trigger the invoice creation on a manual basis. And then we step them into the next part, which is an automated process that would allow them to manage the data properly, and the invoicing would take care of itself. So the first thing that the project managers would know was that an invoice would arrive in their inbox for approval the following day. And so as long as they took day-to-day tasks under their wing and they managed those tasks for readiness for invoicing, then the invoice would just be done. And that level of data exhaust on the invoicing process has really helped them transform the way they work. But we couldn't have done it without taking them through a middle step where they got more familiar and more comfortable with the invoicing process. Otherwise, the change was too great, and we did try it, and it was too great. So we prioritize the improvements in a way that release value, minimize the level of change to maximize the productive output. We got the process owners involved to help manage stakeholders around that, and analysts involved to help manage their users. That were all sat within the vision of what we're doing, and it all represented a huge productivity gain, because now the business was able to produce a lot more invoices with the same amount of productivity effort.
So you just didn't sell them a NetSuite system. You sold them a life-changing software. Right?
Yeah, well, Ria, what we like to do is bring clients through a journey, and that journey really has them gradually releasing value in a way that aligns with the speed with which that business can be embraced. And so that not every business is the same in how fast they transition their own digital transformation process. And so by taking a managed service approach, we get to time things out in a way that gives them the resources at a readiness for themselves, and lets the business be its own engine of change, rather than forcing it, though we do. The managed service approach just helps us balance those requirements and stakeholders much more effectively.
Yeah, and it takes an expert to do that. I mean, it takes two to tango, but definitely Etter+Ramli is can really quarterback and put discipline within that life cycle and until deployment and until you utilize and increase usage of the system. So thanks, Todd, for that incredible explanation and insight. So is there anything else that you want the audience to know in this webinar?
Look, the most important thing is that productivity doesn't just happen. It needs effort, and that effort is not just about hammering nails. That effort is about planning. It's about design. It's about strategic input into what does success really look like, and how can we measure it along the way. And these are elements that I hold very dear, and I really make sure that all of our engagement teams are working in a way that really speaks to this productivity gain. Because at the end of the day, NetSuite's a terrific system, and we've used it, and we've seen a lot of customers get a lot of benefit out of it. But we've also seen lots of customers stagnate or flounder in their productivity improvements for all sorts of reasons. And we really sit behind that and help clients truly understand what does success look like and plan them through that life cycle. And we do it with our hand on heart, because this is the body of knowledge that we hold dear.
Correct. Yeah, very seasoned and profound knowledge of NetSuite. So thanks again, Todd. Been very helpful. And I think the audience wants to ask offline. And I told them that, yeah, they can reach out to us anytime and share with us their stories. So if there's anybody here in the audience who wants to ask away, then we'll give you some time.
Terrific. Here to help.
Address it. Yeah.
Ask away. Three, two, one.
Yeah, so I think they're all shy and they're just getting my email. So I hope to address them all accordingly. So everybody, thank you so much. Todd, Kimpton, and May, and everybody who's in the call. We'll see you again in our next live webinar.
Thanks, Ria. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.